welcome to another episode of Pilates Elephants. I am here with Taylor Gotovac. Taylor, welcome.
Thanks, Rap. Thank you. Hi guys. Obviously, my name is Taylor. I'm the co-founder and head coach of SE Pilates that opened up just in December last year. So only just over a month ago now.
Yeah, and that's what we're here to talk about, is your journey to become a Pilates studio owner, which is you're still really in the midst of. Can you give us a quick rundown just for those listening on the planet, Pluto, which isn't a planet anymore, but like where in the world is your studio? What's the format? Give us the basic rundown of the studio.
Sure. So we're in Australia, Melbourne. The studio is a dual studio, so it's a reformer and a heated mat studio. So we've got 2 rooms. We've got 11 reformer beds and we've got 20 heated mat spaces.
You told me a while ago you're going to have 12 reformer beds. What happened to the 12th one?
Yeah. This is a bit of trial and error, hey, when it comes to, I guess, fit outs and planning and getting your drawings done up. You got to be on target. We thought we would fit the 12. The 11th one did fit. We thought we would fit. Yeah, the 12. They did fit, but I wasn't happy with the layout. I didn't want people to feel squished. I wanted the trainers to have ample room to, maneuver and get dynamic on the reformer and be able to not feel restricted with the movements that they could teach. It was going to fit fine, but that was the problem for me. It would fit fine. It wouldn't fit well. And especially when it came to opening, I didn't want people to come in and kind of be like, oh, great class, great vibe, loved it, but it was a bit too squishy in there. So I wanted to make sure that, I'd rather sacrifice one and give those that were there more space to move and the trainers more freedom than to squish in just another for the sake of it. So
you've got an extra reformer in your garage now?
I do. I have an extra one. Yeah.
And so how many square meters roughly is the space? The whole studio?
The whole studio would be about maybe 150 square meters. 130 square meters.
Okay. That's like 1,500 square feet roughly.
Yeah. It's decent. Yeah.
And so you're in Essendon. Is Essendon right?
Yeah.
You're in
Essendon,
Melbourne. Yeah. And so what style of Pilates do you teach?
I would say more on the dynamic side. That's always been my personal style of teaching. I've always liked to keep it a bit dynamic, sort of go out of the box a little bit, test some movements, test people's range, give people that freedom of movement and not be so scared to try stuff. And that was something that I always, when I went into it, I wanted the trainers to, I guess, they didn't have to have that exact same teaching style, but just be, I guess, motivated to also want to try. And also want to give a bit of dynamic movement a go. So I'd say probably more dynamic, probably more upbeat style of Pilates. In saying that though, always prioritize a good cool down, especially in the hot room because it gets pretty warm in there. And I do really like to bring people back to a bit of a steady state before they walk out because they can get their heart rate pretty high. So just to make sure that they leave not hating me, that's kind of my method. I conflict the savage I unleash by fixing it in the last 5 minutes. So yeah, that's probably more so our style.
Okay. So it's like kind of a faster pace, whole body movements, full range, and it's a challenging strength, right? So it's a fairly vigorous fitness based style of Pilates, right? Is that true?
I would say so. We've got 2 styles of reformer. So we've got dynamic, which is more about OG style based reformer. And then we've got strong, which is going to be that a little bit more, strength based infused reformer. And I did have a little bit of conflicts when I named my OG class dynamic because it's a bit of a conflict. It's like, oh, well, if you're calling it dynamic though, how is it OG? But I guess
and when you say OG, do you mean the Contrology repertoire?
Yeah, like quite original. But I guess it's more original to us as opposed to very stock contrology stuff. And I more wanted, if the trainers are going to focus on more foundational movements, and growing from that foundation into those progressions, dynamics, the class where you're going to get more of that feel. Whereas opposed to strong is a little bit more, we might start off, on that more upbeat foot and then ramp it up with things like, maybe going a little bit heavier on the load or maybe less breast breaks in between. So they are similar, but they just kind of have that little bit of a difference.
And who's your core clientele?
This has been an interesting one. I've had an abundance of clients. I have had a lot of my clients come to me from previous years that I've been at, which I've been so stoked about. They're still walking in every day now. I'm seeing the fresh faces come back and I'm giving them big cuddles as they walk in. So it's so good to see them coming back. But I guess our audience has been, I'm going to say predominantly, if we're talking age, predominantly like 20 to 45 is the predominant, not total. So nice big bracket, to be honest. And in that area of Melbourne, I have had relatively strong clients, relatively strong in the sense of they are more often than not already Pilates experienced. Not all, though. We are getting a fair few beginners, or they've come from some sort of movement background.
All right. So that's the basic sketch of your studio. What I really want to, delve into is your journey to opening the studio. So can we scroll back in time to, like, how long have you been certified, just to begin with? When did you qualify as a Pilates instructor?
I qualified in 2019.
And we're in 2020, just started 2023 now. So like 3.5, 4 years ago, something like that.
Yep.
All right. And so
that's weird to say. That's so weird to say.
You started out working in other people's studios, right? So when did you first think that you'd like to open your own studio?
In all honesty, you often hear with these things, it's always been a dream of mine. And I can't relate in that sense fully. I started off teaching Pilates. It was not what I expected to be doing. I loved Pilates. I'd done it for a fair bit before, and I did come from a dancing background, so I was very used to movement. I also loved training in the gym, so always been a big advocate for movement and loved, staying active, and that's always been like a high value of mine. And then I jumped into Pilates and I loved it. And I remember my trainer at the time, we were talking about, I was actually thinking of being a PT, but I wasn't sure that it was exactly the route that I wanted to go down. I didn't really want to be a personal trainer, but I knew I wanted to work in health and fitness. And then my instructor at the time said to me, why don't you go and do your Pilates course? And I sort of thought, I can't do that. I don't know how to teach Pilates. And he said, why? Why not? And I guess that was actually right before COVID ticked off, and I decided to do it. And we, went into lockdown at that time. So everything was completely online. And I loved the course so much. In all honesty, it was also a perfect time to have done it because it kept me busy outside of everything that was going on in the world. It was kind of like this little pocket that I had that I could do my own thing, and I kept learning and I kept growing, and I kind of was able to flush out everything else that was happening. So perfect timing in that department as well. But I more did it as, I guess, I wanted to have something on the side, a bit of a side hustle, wanted to do something that I enjoyed, and I enjoyed it from the get-go. I think having a bit of a dancer background, I've been used to learning and knowing a routine, so it kind of felt like that at the start for me.
What did you do for work before you were a Pilates instructor?
I was in HR. Yeah, HR. So very corporate lifestyle. And I wanted to do it as a side hustle, and I came out of lockdown. And all these studios around me I found were kind of needing trainers. And I thought, okay, this is really great. I've got the opportunity to jump in and jump on a few shifts. And honestly, it was within a matter of probably 2 months, I found myself with a full-time schedule and I left my corporate role. And 2 years into that, I was an instructor full time for pretty much the 2 years. So has it always been a dream of mine? No, but it very quickly did. When I understood the lifestyle and how much I loved it, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I never felt like that about anything before, and I think that's what they mean when they say, like, when you find the right thing, you'll know because it won't feel like work. That I can definitely relate to. So that's kind of how it sparked for me. In terms of knowing that I wanted to have my own business, I think that comes down to always being someone who's kind of morphed towards more of a leadership role or taking on like leadership in what I was doing. I've always wanted to, I guess, work for myself, as I guess a lot of people do now. And I think coming out of COVID and all that mess and debacle that we lived through kind of showed that I think we did come out the better end of the stick, in the sense that there's a lot more opportunity for that now. And I kind of felt like it was the perfect timing. So I started to work towards it, and then I found my business partner, which I'll go into detail a little bit down when we get into that. But it kind of just fell into tuition. So I didn't know for the longest time, but when I knew that that's what I wanted.
What is it about working for yourself or having your own, because it's not really working for yourself, it's having your own business. You have people who work for you now. So what is it about starting your own business that attracted you?
I think it was the fact that the decision making laid on me. And as much as that can be stressful, I think it's also very empowering, because whatever decisions you make, the end result is going to fall into your hands. So it's that ability to make decisions and know that it's going to directly impact you, as opposed to impact the individual that you, or the company, or whatever it is that you're working for. So it kind of also makes all the hard yards and the effort all the more worth it, because it's you that's taking that direct, that direct feedback from the client. You see them achieving their goals, and you get to see all that and know that it's because of what you've got here, because of what you've created. So I think that direct feedback from the service, or in this case, the service that you're delivering, I think that's why I really wanted that. I wanted to feel that, straight from the clients.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that.
Fair.
So when you're teaching full time, you've left the corporate world, you're loving teaching Pilates, and you're starting to think like, yeah, I know what I want to do now. I want to open my own business. So tell me about how you connected with Shari, your business partner. What came first? Did you go, I'm going to do it, and then kind of Shari came along, or did you look for somebody before you could, do it yourself? Or how did that all happen?
Yeah. Me and Shari have been great friends for many years. We actually started in our first retail job together when we were about at the ripe age of 14. So we met a very long time ago. And Shaz is not a Pilates instructor. She's not, a fitness facilitator, but she does love Pilates, has for quite a long time. And it was strange, because I knew, when I knew that I wanted to open a business or to run my own show. And I guess circling back to that quickly, Raph, sorry, a lot of that also would have seeped from when I was in lockdown, especially in Melbourne, because we were quite heavily restricted here. I was facilitating all my online stuff myself. So I was doing a lot of online teaching, just solo. So I kind of got a bit of grips around what it was like to have my own show going. And I guess that also sparked a little bit of it for me too. But in terms of Shari, I actually think it was, I think we met up one day, in lockdown when we were permitted to do our walks in our radius. And we got talking, and we were just chatting all about, we were one of those group of friends that we weren't the closest of close, but we had those, every 4 to 6 month catch ups. It wasn't a frequent friendship, but we'd always stayed very close. So this was, about 5 years ago. Sorry, 5 or 6 years ago, we would have met then. And we're having one of our catch ups, and I think we started talking about Pilates, and I think Shaz might have said, I'd love to do that as a side hustle, that'd be so great. And then one thing kind of came to the next, and I think we were talking about it from a business perspective. And then I think it might have been that week we were chatting over text. And I think she said to me, what do you reckon about opening up a business together? And I kind of said, Oh, I mean, I guess that could work. And obviously, you know, Shari not being in the fitness industry, I'd actually always imagined prior to that I would do it with another trainer. I always thought, you know, I'll go in with another trainer and we'll do it together. And when Shari came to me and said that, I thought about it for a bit and I thought, oh, I don't know how that will work. And then when I sat on it and realized that actually I think this will work in our favor 20 times more than it would that if I was to go into it with a trainer, because of the different skill sets that we bring to the table and because of, you know, what she can offer that I don't have and vice versa. I think this could actually work. And it definitely did. So patting ourselves on the back for that decision, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm really stoked that I did go into this business with someone that, you know, doesn't mock the same skill sets as me. You know, she's very business savvy. She's done her degree in international business and she's always wanted to go into a business ownership. So that's what she's wanted to do. Whereas me, you know, I'm not so business savvy, but servicing and facilitating, you know, group fitness, especially obviously in the Pilates space, is what I do. So the two of us came together and it was just like a bit of a perfect match. So, and they do say that you shouldn't go into business with your friends, but I have to challenge that because I think it depends on the friendship and I think it depends on the people. We are very, very honest with each other. We're both very honest and quite upfront people, but that works for us. We don't hide anything from each other or, I guess, you know, if we have an opinion about something, we'll share it as opposed to beating around the bush about it. We'll just say what we think open and honestly. And it helps us make decisions more efficiently, to be honest. So, yeah, that's kind of me and Shari's story and how we came to link up.
Best way to be. And I think I agree entirely that you've got the best possible blend of skills there. I think having two trainers opening a business can work for sure, and I know people have done it. But I think you get so much more value when you have somebody who loves doing the things you hate doing and is good at doing the things that you're not good at doing, and vice versa. And also, I don't know exactly how it works with you and Shari, but it sounds like she's not involved, like she's not customer facing. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes. So, yeah, we decided, you know, we had to have that chat when we first came together and said, okay, so we're going to do this together, but how is that actually going to look? And I think that's a really important thing and something that I would advise to anyone listening that does want to go into business within the fitness industry. If you are going to do it with a business partner, I think it's really important to be clear and definitely seek that clarity from both ends from the beginning of how it's going to look. And look, as you start to move, things will change, especially if you have, you know, a bit of a friendship dynamic. You will pick each other up when you need it. You know, if I know that she needs a hand, I'll jump in and vice versa. I might not be as ace as she is, but I'll give it my best crack, and same with her. But I think it's really important to know from the beginning and clearly know who is looking after what, because then you can start to double handle things and it can get a little bit confusing, and you want to make sure that you're investing your space of time into what that part of the business needs, and same with your partner. Yeah.
Do you guys have a partnership agreement?
We do.
Awesome. Because that's a classic mistake that I've made, is not having one. Tell me about the process of deciding what the studio would be like how big it would be, where it would be, who the clientele would be, what the style of teaching would be. You know, how did you agree on that process? Did you sort of take yourself for a weekend away and write it on a whiteboard, or did it just emerge in a dream? You know, how did it happen?
This is a bit of a tough one because I think that you can have a vision, but then there's also a matter of things that are always going to be out of your hands. And I think that that's something that I've definitely learned in this process, and I learn still every day. That
they say if you want to make God laugh, show him your business plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Look, you can have a plan and you can be organized and time efficient and know exactly what you want to do, but you cannot stop obstacles and you cannot stop what is available, to be honest, at the time. We were looking for a space for about a year. before we found it, and we nearly signed somewhere a few months before we found the Essendon location, Killor Road. It's pretty challenging when you've got a vision and you're so headstrong about the vision. And that was, I guess, a great thing that me and Shari shared. We had the same vision aesthetically. We very much, to be honest, liked the same things. We liked the same kind of look. We felt the same about the kind of vibe that we wanted to achieve. And I guess because she was a client, she was, doing Pilates. She knew what she liked. She came to my classes all the time and loved them. She goes, "Oh, you're just the best trainer. Like, I love how you make me feel in class. I love the music. I love the vibe." And we had the same appearance vibe in mind. Like we had the same sort of, I guess, design style. We both liked the same things. So in that sense, that worked in our favor because we just liked the same things. But when it came to finding the right place to embed that in, it's freaking hard. It's hard, especially coming out of COVID as well. We'd done it. There were a lot of leases up for grabs, but they were not what we had in mind. And I think that there is a point in time where you have to sometimes, I don't think it's, you have to find a fine line between being willing to compromise, but also knowing what you value and what it's worth and pushing for that and not lowering your standard. There's a really fine line and you've got to meet in the middle, and that can be really challenging. And we did find that pretty tough, especially when it kind of felt like everywhere we were looking just wasn't working out. There was always something that wouldn't fit the brief. And that, I guess, in that sense can kind of elaborate onto even running a business. Like you're never going to be able to tick every box. So it's kind of worthwhile dropping that expectation, but just making sure that you strive to tick the boxes that you tick well. You're never going to be able to please every single client, but the ones that you are hoping to target and that you are there and suitable for, you want to make sure you tick that box for them pretty well. And same when we're looking for the place, we noted down the things, okay, what are non-negotiable for us and what are we willing to be like, okay, it's not perfect, but it can work. A non-negotiable for us was definitely having ample space. When we had a look at, our competitors and at the Melbourne market, I wanted to make sure that the studio was spacious. Not only because we did want the 2 studio space, like rooms, but also because when we were comparing, a lot of them, and again, this is just the predicament that we find ourselves in Melbourne, a lot of the leases are quite small. You're either going for, a shop base, commercial lease. You're either going for, it's quite, whether it's like cafe styled or it's quite small. Especially if you want street front, a lot of them are smaller, more boutique clothing stores or things like that. That's kind of where they've come from. So you either go down that track or it can be quite officey as well. So the ceilings can be quite low, and you can have that very office feel to it. Or you go down the opposing track and you go more industrial and you lose that street front. You lose that lot of foot traffic, but you go into industrial and you have quite a grand space. But in saying that, bigger means probably more expenses. You have a larger space to fit out. You have more room to move, which is great if that's what you want. But you, all in all, to put it bluntly, are going to be spending a lot more because the space is a lot bigger. Then you fight the challenges of if you want a space that's got good foot traffic, it's usually going to be probably higher in that per annum amount because you're in a sought after area. You might have all the shops around. It might be quite a quirky area that you're looking in. So there's a lot, they know that it's quite busy. It's a business area. So the lease is just going to generally be more expensive. Whereas you go industrial, it's probably going to be a bit cheaper for you. You might have that opportunity to have a lot more parking. But you lose that drive-by notice. You lose that, ability for people to find you a lot easier. If they don't know that you're there pretty much based off online and marketing, then they're not really going to know that you're there. So lots of pros and cons that you have to weigh up. And I think that that's the most important thing. Decide what your non-negotiables are from the start, and compare, market check, look at who you are going up against and look at who, is around you, and compare what do they have that we want to make sure that we have, and what don't they have that we want to make sure that we can facilitate, or, what's our point of difference. So yeah, all those things I think are important to decide in the beginning, but you have to know where you have a little bit of wiggle room, where you find that you're willing to compromise.
Yeah, agreed. I think where you choose to set up your studio is just about the most important decision you make that determines the success of your business, because like you say, there's exposure, there's the cost, there's the vibe, there's, the fit out costs, there's all of these parking, all of these things that you have to balance. And it's always going to be some kind of trade-off between all of those things. And so you have to find the right balance.
We also found that, we were finding some great spots that were on the other side of town. And the pro with that was that they were great spots. They fit a lot of the brief. They ticked a lot of those boxes, but they missed one important, really crucial mark for me. And that was that my clients could come there too, because my clients were on this side of town where I had been teaching and where I had built up, my trainer profile. And I wanted them to have that to come to. I wanted them to be a part of that from when I opened. I didn't want them to feel like, Taylor's opened up a studio, but it's all the way down in, in Port Melbourne or in South Yarra or one of those further away areas. I can't get there. So then you kind of start from the start again, So that was one major box I also wanted to tick. I wanted to be close in the sense that I knew that those that had come and had loved my sessions before and loved what I was all about would come and be part of that. So location, 100%, Raph, I back it. That was really important for us.
Yeah, and in Melbourne, those of you not in Melbourne, we've got a river called the Yarra, and there's kind of an invisible dividing line down the middle of the city. Basically, anything on the other side of the river, whichever side of the river you're on, anything on the other side of the river, too far. Yeah.
Result.
So you took a year to, or so to find the right space. Tell me about the process of signing a lease and, all of the rigmarole goes with council permits and building plans and organising the renovations and all of that stuff. Like how much of a stress was that for you, or did that go reasonably smoothly?
Yep. Definitely not smoothly, I'll say that. When we originally thought that we'd found our spot, and in all honesty too, Raph, I think that now when I think back to the first spot that I thought that we were going to sign for, I felt in my gut from the start that something wasn't really right with it. And I think it was because we were compromising on those boxes that I said were our non-negotiables earlier. And it was kind of out of desperation of, well, we kind of have to find something soon because we're going to miss the boat. One of our main goals was that we really wanted to open before the new year. And we were talking about this in July, August. So we knew we didn't have that long. And we really wanted to open before the end of the year. And we got told X amount of times that our timeline was unrealistic. We got told by our friends, family, tradies, lawyers that, our timeline was really tight, pretty unrealistic. So that was a big thing for us. So in terms of the process with all the other things that come with it, I guess that's one thing that I'm thankful for Shari for ample things, but that's a massive stress that I guess Shari was able to not take off my shoulders, but we were able to work through it together. Coming from that business background, she was already quite across a lot of the things that she knew we would have to do. The process obviously was a first time for her as well, so very big learning experience, but she was almost anticipating it more than me. So it kind of became a thing of Cheryl like, okay, Tay, we've got to do this, this, and this. I'd be like, okay, cool. You let me know what I need to do to help you for us to do that. So that was kind of the relationship that we had for that first probably month and a half while we got all the nitty gritty organized. And then, obviously once all the lease documentation was done, there's a bit of back and forth when it comes to negotiation. We did that together. But again, Shara was quite across, I guess, how to portray that, when to kind of stand your foot down, stand your ground, and when to give way. Again, it's all just about finding a balance, that, especially when you do it for the first time, it's hard, and I think that one thing that I do want to make mention of, is that being two relatively young girls, we did find that there was, points where, not that was getting, I guess, taken advantage of, but a little bit brushed under the rug in a sense that, sometimes we were kind of put in a position where that opposing whoever we were dealing with, whether it was, leases or whether it was trades, kind of that them feeling like they might know a bit more than you, and kind of, saying or putting it in a sense of, this is your first time. And I guess this goes with any first time business, this is your first time. So not only do we lack trust in what you know, but we know more than you actually. And so you kind of can get that feel a little bit. And to an extent, I do respect it, because it's true, although those people in those positions have been probably in the industry for longer, or business owners, they have done it for longer. So it does come with truth that it was our first time. So a lot of things were learning experience, a lot of things we didn't know. But I think you also have to back yourself in those situations. And it can be hard to back yourself when you almost feel like maybe you don't know. And I guess that's a little bit of that imposter syndrome that we can sometimes get. Even I hear this a lot with new teachers as well, that they feel that imposter syndrome come on, like, they're not capable or what they're teaching, they don't fully have the knowledge to facilitate out. But I think that just comes with backing yourself and being confident in the sense of, if I want this enough, I will do it. And if there's a space that you feel like you lack education on, go and learn and find out what you need to know to feel like you have that confidence to stand your ground a little bit and be like, actually, I do know that. And I can kind of tell you from my perspective how that looks for us. So again, it's just a matter of that balancing act. But that was something that we did find a few times that was challenging to work through. But I feel like now, moving forward, when we do, come into business expansion and things that we have planned down the track, we feel very different about now that we have done it once. So we have been through that process. I don't think it makes it easier, but I think when you anticipate and you have a rough idea for what you're going to go through, you can be a little bit more efficient and a bit more strong-minded in your approach, and know exactly the space that you're coming from and be confident in your decision-making. Mm. But that can be a bit of a deterrent.
Yeah, that I think you've really hit something important there, in that as a business owner, I think it's vital that we listen to counsel from people who've been there, done that before. But nobody's going to know your business as well as you do, and nobody's going to be as invested in your business as you are. Like, your care factor is going to be 1,000 times higher than somebody who's just advising you casually, because if they don't have skin in the game, it's like, what's it to them if they give you the wrong advice and the whole thing crashes and burns? It's like, oh, well, sorry about that, So I absolutely agree. You need to listen to what other people have to say who know what they're talking about, but then trust your gut. And sometimes that means going against people's advice who on paper know more than you. How did you, and you mentioned imposter syndrome there. How have you, you strike me as someone who's pretty confident and not afraid to speak your mind or disagree if you think it's, called for. How did you navigate that whole, because even just negotiating a lease, right? Like when you go to the shop and buy a piece of clothing or a loaf of bread, it's like the price tag's on it and you just pay, pull out your credit card and pay the price, right? But on a lease, everything's negotiable, right?
It is. Everything is. Yeah.
So how did you navigate that? I'm thinking just from a perspective of like standing up for yourself, having difficult conversations, calling bullshit, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think that comes from passion. And when I say that, I think that, in all honesty, I think that passion is just being more, loving something more and being more willing to put everything into it, regardless of the fear that it will fail. I think that's what passion is all about. And that can be relatable to any industry in any sense. I think if you have enough passion for something and you love something enough, you will do what it takes and you will have the uncomfortable conversations, and you will put yourself in a position that, is out of your comfort zone because you love it enough to try than to be scared by the idea that it might fail. And that I can relate to in multiple avenues in opening up a business for sure. And that definitely resonated here. We were passionate and driven enough about what we wanted that we were willing to have those chats because we knew that, well, you know what, this is scary, but it's scarier than signing something on that dotted line that we don't agree with or that we feel like, is it right for us? Because then that's going to daunt us for a really long time. I think that you have to put it in perspective of things can feel quite, scary at the time. But if you look at it over a big broad view, if you look at it and how long your lease terms are, like for example, we're in that lease for 4 years it is. If you look at it over a 4-year time, am I really going to want to put our name on something that doesn't resonate with us from day dot for the next 4 years? Like, I'll be in my late 20s by that time. So that's that's far away. I'll be like 28. I don't want to put my name down for something and I'm having to deal with it for that long. So as much as it might suck at the time to have that chat, and as scary as it might be, it's something that you have to look, okay, well, on the broad spectrum, looking at this from afar, what's more important to me? How this facilitates over a long period of time, or how it feels in this next half an hour? Because you can get through half an hour, but you can't get through 4 years if there's ample things in there that aren't going to work for you. And that's where Shari's knowledge also really came into play, because from a business perspective, looking at our actual business model and how that was all planned out, she could say to me, Tay, this actually isn't going to work. Like, even if we want it to work, it's not. So we have to work out how we're going to negotiate this. And we are two people that are quite, as much as I'm obviously more client facing, Shari is also, very, very good with her wording and quite good at obviously like demonstrating our point of view and what we're trying to get across and communicating that. I think it's really good to have that strong communication. If that's not something that you're strong at, definitely work on that. Because communication in everything, in all relationships, and the relationship that you have with the lawyer is an important relationship. The relationship that you have with your partner is an important relationship. They're all different, but they're all important. So communication for sure, working on that if it's not something that's your strongest. That's kind of how we had those situations. I tried to think of it as a long term, as opposed to how uncomfortable it might feel now. In the long run, it's going to benefit me much more, and I'm going to thank myself for having this awkward chat.
100% agree. So tell me about the business model you mentioned. So by model, you mean a spreadsheet, right? That says, here's how much we expect to earn, here's how much we expect to spend, here's how much we expect to have left over at the end of the month, et cetera. Yeah. So when did you build that? Presumably before you opened, right? Like, so you're modeling it out.
Yeah. We started to build that pretty much when we decided that the idea that we were going to do it. So when we came together and we had the idea, we thought, okay, like, this is a great idea. I remember we caught up at our local cafe and we had the laptop there and we pulled up Excel and we just started spreadsheeting. We just started to flesh it out to see what it would be like, to give ourselves an idea of what this thing might actually be like.
Isn't it amazing how you can get excited by a spreadsheet?
Yeah. I hate Excel. Now I love it. I really hate it.
When you see the number at the bottom right corner and it's a number that you want to see, you're like, oh, yeah, this is sexy.
Yeah. Well, when it's in the minus though, that's when it gets a bit, it starts to trickle the point a bit. But look, we started to just flesh it out more as an exploration. We were just exploring. We wanted to see how it would be. And to be honest, majority of that was carried by Shaz. She kind of came in and said, okay, well, this is what it would look like. This is what we would need to do.
And so you're just kind of going like, oh, what if we had 12 reformers? What if we had 5 reformers? What if we had 30 reformers? What if we charged this much? What if we paid this much rent? And then you just basically see, all right, so what does that mean in terms of our profit or loss at the end of the month?
Absolutely. Yeah, you've got to look at what your expenses are going to be, and then what you want your service to be. And we also compared across a few other business models that we could find online. Some of them you can find online, especially off big franchises. If you do want to compare, you can find them and have a look. We did compare in that sense as well. You also have to think about things like your marketing, your socials. There is a lot of avenues. You've got to think about your design elements and where that's going to come into play. You've got to think about your website and all that sort of tech creation sort of thing. So there are a lot of avenues that go beyond the place and the people. But in saying that, the place and the people are the most important. So yeah, when you say business model, all that sort of stuff, how we wanted Essie to look, what we wanted the business to look like, what we wanted to facilitate. And to be honest with you, we actually did not initially have heated mat planned. That came down the track when we started to look and we found the first lease that we thought that we were going to end up signing. That's when the heated mat element came into play because we had so much space. And that's when we also looked at the expenses of creating a heated mat studio. Obviously, reformer equipment is quite pricey. It's XY. So you've got that expense there. But when it comes to
heated... You've got the Allegro too, so just about the most expensive reformers you can buy.
We can't help it. We're the bougie type. But yes, they are pretty pricey. Great machines though. They are great. Definitely not the be all end all. Like you could definitely get just as much out of other machines. But I went and trialed a few and I just felt the best on the Allegros, to be honest. And it did suit, I knew it was going to suit the aesthetics of the studio as well. So
yeah, aesthetically, they're pretty amazing to look at.
Yeah, they are. They're quite sexy machines. Yeah. So yeah, looking at everything, I guess from that aspect. And yeah, the heated mat space came a little bit further down when Shari was actually doing a lot of heated Pilates herself. She wasn't doing reformer. She was mostly doing heated mat. And I was instructing Matt at the time. And she kind of said, why don't we just do a heated studio? Let's have a look at what that would cost. And the expenses, obviously being a mat studio, it's not as high because you've basically got your mats, your equipment, and that's really it. It's not, you're not dropping nearly 10 grand on each machine. So it's something that if we had the space, which we found that we did, we were willing to slot that in. And I love teaching mat, especially heated mat. I think it's for a trainer, as much as it can be fatiguing, it's definitely extremely fun. So I love teaching.
It's a real point of difference. It's a real point of difference.
It is. Absolutely. It is. And, look, there is more starting to pop up, but it is still quite hard to find. And it's quite a niche space. There are not a lot of trainers that have experience teaching in a heated studio because obviously it's a lot more it's a lot more harder to find. So it's a lot more of a niche bracket.
All right. So let's transition into the team there because you've opened a business that is much bigger than one trainer could, run. Like you must be running like 40, 50 plus sessions per week, right?
Running about 55 at the moment, I think it is. Yeah, 55 at the moment.
So how many do you teach personally?
I teach 20. Mm-hmm. Give or take also covers whenever it's needed.
Right. So you've got, 3, 4 other trainers working there for you?
Yeah. Yep. Like I've got 5 other girls. Yep.
And do you have anyone else on the team, bookkeeper, receptionist, cleaner, anything like that?
No, me and Shari do all the other stuff. So Shari does all the back end and then anything client facing. And that was part of kind of our agreement from the beginning. So anything client facing or trainer facing, I would look after. And then anything back end in terms of memberships, financial stuff, stock, maintenance type stuff, Shari would look after or kind of liaise how we're going to work that.
Mm-hmm. And So how did you go about hiring a team? Because you have to hire a team before you open, and you're operating on, whatever savings you had plus what you could borrow from the bank. And, all of a sudden now you think like, okay, I'm going to be paying these 4 people out of my own pocket. So how do you, all right, so there's that. So there's the kind of the fear aspect of like, shit, I'm just spending money like it's going out of fashion here. And we haven't even opened yet. And then there's also just like the process of finding the right people, because you had a real pretty clear vision of how you wanted the studio to be. And as a young entrepreneur, what are you, 24? Like, did you struggle to, with a clear vision, right? Did you struggle to say to maybe more experienced instructors, hey, look, I know you've taught one way, but I need you to teach this way? Or like, how did you bring a team together and get them to do it your way?
Trains was a tough one. I think that, in all honesty, and I speak for instructors listening, create a profile for yourself online, because in all honesty, that for me was it's like a CV for us. At the end of the day, you're not going to really know how someone is until you have the experience doing their class, or until you've met them. So they can put what they put on paper, just like you can put that you've done this degree and you've got that education on paper, but things on paper and then things when they facilitate and flesh out can be completely different. And although we do have quite a vision, and we know exactly, what SE is all about, I've always been, a trainer that I love the freedom to teach and explore. And I've always wanted my trainers to have that same ability. I've never wanted to limit them to what they can do. And I've always wanted them to be 110% themselves. And that's something that I looked for straight away, because for me, it's got nothing to do with how good you are at Pilates. Like, you can ace every movement. You can chop all the springs off and show me snake without the springs. And you can, be the most advanced of a mover. But if I can't teach personality. And that was something that's the biggest thing for me. Like, and it always was from the beginning. And me and Shara had the discussion when we started to look for instructors. It's all about you as an individual. And I think that also comes down to, client feedback, because something that I've learned as a trainer, and I guarantee trainers will vouch for me with this, clients will forgive you for small mistakes. And I remember I actually got told this in my course with Bree when I was learning, people will forgive you for little stuff ups. And it's true. They will. If you have the personality and you're yourself and you're authentic and you instill, encouragement and empowerment into your clients, they're going to forgive you if you forgot to do a pulsing set on the right leg. Like, they're going to not remember if you stuffed up the left side. That, that's not the be all end all. And I think sometimes getting a bit caught up in making sure that, you remember the routine from start to finish. And that's something that this is, individual to myself. And I'm sure that everyone has it, everyone has a different way that they teach. I pretty much from the beginning stopped note taking, and I didn't want to look at notes. And that wasn't in a sense to, like try to scare myself or feel like, I can, I don't need something to back me. I can do this. But I wanted to get rid of that imposter syndrome nice and early. And I felt like when I stripped away the notes and I didn't have a plan, I actually taught my best. When I was just myself and I went in there and I didn't try to be anyone else, and I didn't try to, do the same class as anyone else. Definitely take inspiration of other instructors. I do it every day. But I think that definitely being you, and again, that all boils down to, having that passion. Like, if you have that passion, you're going to have drive, and it shows when you instruct. So that for us was the main thing for me. It wasn't really even about the style of teaching, because anything like that, I can always say, I love that set that you did. Have you thought about trying this here? Like, have you thought about, experimenting with spring settings there, or things like that? That's stuff that you can learn. You can be taught those things, but you can also learn it over time. But you can't teach your teaching voice. That's going to come from you. And that for me and Shari was the biggest thing. You can't teach vibes and you can't teach personality, and they were the most crucial. So in terms of finding the right trainers, I was selective, but that was what I was selective on, not selective on the skill set, not selective on, how good you were on the reformer, or, if you could hold a plank longer than me, like that didn't matter. It was more just on how you make the clients feel. And that's all going to come from how you flesh out the class.
Because like you say, people will totally forgive you, or probably won't even notice a lot of the time if you forget to do the pulses on the right leg, but they will not forgive you if you are a Debbie Downer, or, if you,
I take the piss out of myself all the time, and all my clients know it. And if they listen to this, they'll be laughing, because I am always taking the piss out of myself in that studio. If I forget something, I'll always say like, oh yeah, thanks for reminding me, everyone. Like you were hoping that you were going to get away with that one. It's about being human. Like this is not a perfect world, and being a trainer doesn't mean that you have to be perfect. Far from it. And I think that when you can get on that relatable level with your clients is when you're going to have the best relationship, but that's also going to give you client retention. You have to be, you can't visualize yourself as above in a sense or anything like that. My clients are my friends, and they always have been from the start. I talk to them like I would talk to you, like I would talk to, my friendship group. And then I think that's what I looked for when I was looking for trainers. And I can definitely say I've found that in all of our trainers. They're awesome.
And so was your process like, you've already had a network because you've been out there teaching, so you knew people. Did you just kind of like stalk people on social media and then DM them and say, hey, do you want to come and try out, sort of thing?
I had a little bit of a stalk. And then we also started the social media platform before we opened, obviously, to create a bit of hype. And because we had the aesthetics pretty down pack, I think I flesh out the social medias for the SE account. So that's all my doings. I've also always been pretty well across, but had a little bit of a nick for that sort of thing. I think since I started my Pilates page, I've always liked being quite active on the socials when it comes to business stuff. So this kind of came natural for me. I knew the vibe I was after, and I just started creating it. And it's funny, even now, I still pretty much send most posts over to Shari and go, can you proofread this for me? Because I trust her to find any spelling errors or things like that. But in terms of the appearance and the aesthetics, I feel like we've nailed it pretty well. We've had a lot of compliments on that too. So that's been really awesome to see. But yeah, I got the socials out there quite early. So we did have quite a lot of trainers express interest. And I think even given the area too in Melbourne, there is surrounding studios, but nothing really, really close. And I know too, one of the chats I had when I first thought about opening the studio, when I spoke to friends and family, was, there's nothing around us. We want to go and do this, but I've tried it here and I've tried it there, and it's a little bit too far, and I don't love it either. So it's kind of like, well, I know that there's a gap, there's a gap that needs filling here. And I feel like there must be trainers around here that also want to fill their schedule gap. They must be tired of driving, 30 minutes to get to the studio, especially for a 6 a.m. start. So I did find that we did pick up a bit of interest from socials when we first went out there. And then I also knew a couple trainers from being in the industry. But it's quite hard, Raph. A lot of people are already very in their schedule. And I get it, because I did it for 2 years. So I'm not going to break my schedule to give a studio a go that, is also new. They might not get busy, or they might not, have the best. They might not run their trainer system the best. How do I know they're going to be good? I'm comfortable in what I'm doing. I've got a schedule. I've got my hours guaranteed. Why would I move around? So I get that aspect of things too. It's also quite hard to find very experienced trainers if that's what you're after, because all of them are already quite set in their schedule. So definitely going out on the socials, definitely sliding into some DMs. I did do a few cheeky slides, but I also myself went and booked some classes and met the trainers before I said anything as well. one of my favorite pastimes is going to a Pilates class and not saying what I do. I love it. I love going there and pretending I have no idea because I want to be told what I'm doing for 45 minutes for once. I don't want to have to think about it, you know? So I definitely, I went and tried to get to some sessions, but in saying that too, we were pretty time poor, especially at the end there. It got close and I still needed like two more instructors. And again, having the two studios made this harder. If it was just the one, then I would have been able to just jump in and do it. But a lot of the time I was taken up because I was in the next room. So I couldn't do it. So it didn't matter how much I wanted to, I couldn't.
So you've created a business, and I'm very familiar with this because every business I've had in the last 15 years has been like this, that there's no physical way you could run it by yourself because you've got two simultaneous sessions running in different spaces. So you have to have people helping you.
No, this isn't one of those non-negotiables. This is one that you have no wiggle room.
So, all right. So you've got a team you've set up. And it sounds like you're running. Do you run back-to-back 45-minute sessions? Yep. Way to go. You've done your modeling.
Yeah. So we'll do a 6 a.m., a 7 a.m. So they're back-to-back. We've now just as, and we did also open up at a really crazy time of year. December is probably never a great time to open up a new business.
Well, it's terrible in terms of you won't get a lot of clients, but it's good because you get to iron out all your bugs.
Yes.
There aren't a lot of clients.
Yes. That was the pro that we looked at. We looked at the fact that, okay, we probably won't be as busy as we'd like to be, but it will give us time to have our first month and a bit just getting grips on running the show, you know, what it feels like. In saying that though, I feel like we almost shot ourselves in the foot a little bit because we were pretty busy quickly. So it was great, but we didn't have all that much downtime. I did have to maneuver the schedule around a little bit to give way for, you know, there was certain times where I'm like, oh, look, it's just probably not busy enough to run the session because you have to, at the end of the day, also think like as much as you don't want to let clientele down, there's also got to be, okay, but is it worth it for us? You know, like, and that's a fine line that's hard to decide, but it's a decision that you have to make. But in saying that, like very blessed and stoked with how Essie has done, especially since it's only been about 6 weeks now. And our classes are already like waitlisted. So it's amazing. It's really amazing to see. But yeah, I guess mustering that at that time of year was pretty challenging, but we also did have a little bit more time to see what it was like to be running the show, give us a bit more breathing space. And now we plan, I guess, for the next months ahead and what we're going to do coming into the new season. Like it's summer at the moment, so you have to think about what people want during this season. So now we've really started to, I guess, well, we've already planned quite a bit of it, but we've started to now think about what we're going to do in the next 3, 6, 9 months. So
how are you going against your projections so far?
Pretty bang on. I won't lie. And I honestly, you know, I talk about this when we were doing the fit out because people keep saying all the time, oh, you should be so proud. You should be so proud. This is amazing. And it's only now that I've been in there and I'm instructing and I'm doing what I do that I've really been able to step back and admire it. And that's something that I would definitely like advise. It's, you know, there's such a long process and people see the end result. Everyone sees the end result, but no one sees what happens from A to Y. You know, there's this whole alphabet of obstacles and different hurdles that you have to over jump. And there's so many things that happen in the mix of things you don't plan for, things that you do, but that are really still hard, even though you plan for them. And it really is about learning to love the process because that's what you spend 90% of the time doing. And during that time, if there's anything that I could change, it would be that I don't say change, but if there's anything that I could maybe advise for people that want to do it and that, or maybe they're in the middle of it now or about to start, try to take a step back when it all feels a bit too much and admire what you're doing. because, you know, even during the fit out, like I had trades running through and family running through and going, oh, you know, the paint looks great and this and that. And I'm like, yeah, it's good. When are the plumbers coming? You know, like I didn't even have time to, I didn't even give myself, I should say, the time to sit back and appreciate it. And I think that's something that, yeah, I definitely advocate for, because you spend 90% of the time in the process. You know, you get that lavishing reward of the end piece until it's time to do the next piece that you want to work on. And then you're in that process phase again. And in all honesty, although I see the end piece now, it's still a work in progress. There's still so many things that we want and there is to do. And I think if you can't fall in love with the process of doing it, and if you're, and again, reflecting back on when I was talking about passion, like that's all got to do with this here. If you can't, you know, be in and amongst what you're doing and get the most joy out of that, even when it is hard, you know, me and Shari are both individuals that have found so much joy, funnily enough, in the pain and in the anxieties and in the hard stuff, because that's when you make the most growth. And if you can take a step back, even though it's hard, to admire that and give yourself a pat on the back in the middle of it, then you're going to thank yourself at the end when you do look at it and go, okay, yeah, like I've done something pretty freaking amazing. Because it's hard. It's hard to acknowledge that in the middle of it. Like I'm definitely a character. Like I find it hard to give a bit of self-appraisal. Like I'm all about praising my clients and facilitating and instilling encouragement. But when the tables are turned, sometimes when it's put forward in towards me, I don't give myself that much credit. It's just, I've always kind of been a little bit like that. I can be a bit of a harsh critic. So I think that, yeah, don't be so harsh on yourself and like enjoy that in between process, because that's what you spend most of the time doing.
Yeah, I agree. I agree and disagree with what you said there. I think you've made something amazing and you absolutely should praise yourself. And, you know, and I love the feeling of looking at something that I've built and going, yeah, that's a really fucking cool thing that I built, you know, like and so I totally with you on that. And I 100% agree on the process is really 99% of building a business. Like you're climbing the mountain much more time than you stand at the top of the mountain, because as soon as you get to the top of the mountain, all you see is like, oh shit, there's another mountain now, you know, like,
yep,
so,
exactly.
But where I'm going to disagree is that, you know, in the seasons that I've had in my business, you know, we've had good times, we've had bad times, and we've had multiple of each. And what I've noticed in my own self and in my business, and now I see this in pattern in other people as well, is when you have when you're going through a tough time in your business, whether it's like you're just trying to build it, you're setting it up, or things aren't going the way you want them to, or the money's not coming in the way you need, whatever the hard time is, okay, that forces you to get real and to hustle and to become resourceful and to just make shit happen, right? Like you don't have the option. Like you're locked into a 4-year lease that's going to cost you $250,000 or more, right? You don't have the option of sitting back with your feet on the desk. If the money's not coming in, you got to get out there. And,
absolutely.
And hustle,
yeah,
right? Like,
absolutely.
You're
many hustle moments we have felt.
Right,
yeah.
Right. And so that pressure, which you can, at the time, can feel very like a negative thing, right? But that's the crucible that turns you into a better business owner and builds a better, stronger team and a better, stronger business. And then what I've noticed in myself is when you get to the top of the mountain, you're like, fuck yeah, man, this is awesome. I really know my shit here, right? Then you start getting lazy and complacent and shit starts falling apart, but you don't notice it for a bit until it's really falling apart. And then you're like, oh fuck, you know, and then you're back into hustle mode again, right? And then you start making it better. So I think there is I think that cycle and those seasons are just a natural part of human, you know, existence, you know, but I think that I've come to embrace, I've learned to embrace that, you know, what I used to think of as kind of the stressful moments, but now I just think of as the exciting moments. And that's the real stuff. Like when there's a deadline and you're like, fuck, I don't know how I'm going to meet this and I don't have enough money and I don't blah, blah, blah. It's like, that's the reality.
They never go away. You know, that's always a thing. And exactly what you're saying, like those pressures don't leave. You know, you don't look at the end product now and go, oh, okay, you can wipe the sweat, the hard work's done. Like I see it now, there's a visual, it's there. It doesn't end there. So 100%, that is extremely true, extremely true. And I think that's what I mean when I say like, you got to fall in love with the process because you spend, like you said, 99% of the time in hustle mode, to be honest. And I guess that's probably that deciphering difference between those that succeed in the business and those that come to do it and realize it's not for them. You really have to be willing to be in hustle mode for 99% of the time. And you might even have to flick on for that other 1% as well. There's no real downtime. You know, you might get times where you think, okay, like I've got a bit of time in my hands. It's nice and quiet. Anything can pop up anytime. So,
and then you're just about to, and then an email comes through or a phone call comes through and it's a client who's dissatisfied because the booking system's not working or what, either someone's complaining about a class.
Or the booking system crashes and it's like, okay, well, this is going to fuck us up for like 3 months. We have to fix this right now. It's a right now problem. So yeah, that's really very true. And I think that, if that's something that that's something that you learn, but I don't think, you know, I don't want to say that in past tense because I'm still learning it. And I think that it's something that, I think it's something that you just keep learning, that you keep getting better at. You can't ever master it, I don't think, but you can just keep getting better at it. And I think, if you're made for business and you know that running your own show is what you want to do and you've got that ambition and your passion is strong enough than your fear, then the hustle mode, as hard as it can be, sometimes it becomes not even hustle mode anymore. It just becomes the norm because it's reality.
How have you grown and how has your self-identity changed over the last 6 months you've been building this business?
Yeah. In all honesty, I would say I've always had quite a lot of passion, or when I say always, you know, definitely since teaching, I've always been a very driven individual. I've always been driven. I've always had that quite ambitious characteristic, and Shari resembles that too. In the sense of how doing what we've done has changed me, I think it's definitely made me tidy up my time management skills in the sense of, you know, you've got to find this ability to be time efficient, but then make sure you make, I'm not going to say the right decisions because you can't always make the right decisions and you won't know until it's too late, but making sure that you've evaluated and weighed up. But we don't have that luxury of time to do that all the time, right? So sometimes you have to jump in and call a decision that you don't 100% want to make, or you feel like, oh, if I had another week, if I had a few more days, if I had this much more money, you know, there are decisions that if I had this or if I had that, you would make differently. But that's definitely in a way that I have changed in the last, 6 to 12 months of doing what we've been doing. I'm now a lot more confident in my decision making because I know that I can't always get it right. And if you strive to always get it right, you're going to be dissatisfied. So
all right. Sorry, I just want to jump in there because it sounds like your confidence. You're not more confident that you will get it right. You're more confident that you're going to get it wrong anyway. So
may as well give it a go. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm definitely not more confident that I'll get it right. But I'm more confident, but I'm also more okay with and adaptive to the fact that it could go wrong. And
I think that's my personal philosophy. I think it's a truth of the universe, capital T, capital U, that the best, like you cannot plan, I think it's vital to sit down and think for a minute before you do something momentous like opening a business or, whatever it might be. But like after you've planned for 10 minutes or not exactly 10 minutes, but like once you've done a little bit of planning, additional planning is completely worthless because you're basically going on just imagined reality. Like you don't know what the reality is going to be. So any planning you're doing is basically just guesswork. And so you have to take your best guess and then you just have to do something and see what happens. Right. And then you probably didn't get it quite right, and then you have to do a course correction. Then you go, oh no, whoops, we overcorrected, and then you go back the other way, and you're like, oh, but we forgot this other thing, and it's this constant process of iterating that leads to success. And it's like, yes, it is important to start out with some kind of goal in mind and some kind of vision in mind, but also I think, success comes from a massive bias to action over talking about stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that sometimes too, when you give yourself too much time, you create too much fluff. And when you have too much fluff, then you might not make a decision at all. And that's worse than no decision. So that's
100%.
Yeah, that's definitely been a big growth factor for me. And I guess, one thing that I can't say that I have grown in the sense of is as a facilitator. That was something that I thought would be actually harder than it was easier. I thought stepping in a business owner's shoes, what if it changes me as a teacher? What if it makes me teach different? Or what if I have to teach a bit different because I'm now in the owner's shoes? And I wasn't sure how that was going to pan out. But the minute I stepped in there and I ran my first class, I'm like, oh, it's just me again. Doing what I do, it's no different. And I've always
does that feel like just way inside your comfort zone now, just teaching those classes?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's definitely in the comfort zone. But in saying that, I don't like to sit in the comfort zone. So whenever I feel a bit like, okay, I feel like I'm feeling a bit comfortable, I'm going to try out some new movements. I'm going to really spiral some stuff. And then I try to put together some really strange acronym or some really strange sequence. And everyone gives me a bit of the, oh my gosh, like, what's she coming in with today? Like, what is this? But I get them going. They start moving. That's the most important thing. Get them into the sequel part. And then I just start to butterfly stuff out from there. And that's when, like, I can kind of let that creativity flow and put myself back out of that little comfort box again and try some new stuff. So that's kind of when I'm ever feeling a little bit too comfortable, I always stick to, okay, time to try some new stuff and feel uncomfortable again. But for me, the biggest new stuff in the last X amount of time has been obviously a business side of things. So I haven't had to feel too out of the box in other elements. It's more been in that way. But yeah, teaching is second nature now.
Yeah. I remember when I had a studio and was teaching, 25 classes a week. It's like, you go, when I went into the space to teach, it's like all of a sudden it's like, okay, I just had this stressful conversation with my partner, or the bank balance is too low, or there's a complaint about this or other thing, or I'm not sure about our website or whatever. And it's like you get into the classroom and you just have to put all that stuff aside. And it essentially forces you to just be present in the moment with your clients. And to me, that was the most fun and easiest part of my day always, because it was just like present in the moment. Whereas as soon as you step out the door, you're like, oh shit, the 99 things I've got to do. And
yeah,
yeah,
that's exactly how I feel. Like I step in there and whatever's happened exterior to the rest of the day doesn't mean a thing. And I actually remind the clients of that too when they come in. I'll always sort of say something along the lines of, we've got 45 minutes to work together. Drop whatever's stressing you out for the day at the door. Don't bring it into the next X amount of time. This is your time to do you. Challenge yourself, regress where you need. Like, let's just get into being present in the moment. Forget about everything else for now. Try and leave the mind empty of all those stresses and the shits that's happened during the day. Just leave it there. This is your time now. And it's, to be honest, it's kind of because it's how I feel when I teach. So 100% vouch for that.
And I think that's actually like the biggest benefit of all the benefits of Pilates. I think that is the biggest one, is when you can be in the moment and you can let go of all of those.
Yeah, that's movement in general, really, right? It's like,
but movement in general for sure. I mean, I love running, I love doing weights, all those things. But I think something special about a choreographed sequence where you're concentrating on the technique, and it's like it actually gets you into a very mindful sort of space. Yeah, like almost meditative, where you're not, without any kind of spiritual overtones, but just being like, you can't worry about stuff. Like it just sloughs off you.
And it's funny how that kind of works, because then when you say that and it's, it's like it's sort of like a structured, not going to say routine, but there's a sequence to it, right? It's like when you teach Pilates, it's a sequenced class. You're going to do, you're going to go 360, however you're going to relay it out. There's a sequence there. But it's, when I've gone and done CrossFit classes before, or I've done gym classes, that there's a sequence, I still don't get that same feeling. It's not the same.
Yeah.
And it's funny how that works, because it's still a sequence. It's still a movement delivery, and you're still following a class. You're still following a guided session essentially, but it's just a different epiphany I think you get with Pilates than you get doing that other sort of other style of training. And I think that is what a lot of people I have found to love so much about it.
Yeah. There are two more questions I want to ask you. First one is, how did you open, I've got a pretty good guess as to how this happened, but I'd like to hear what actually happened. How did you manage to get so many clients to begin? You've been open 6 weeks, you're waitlisted, okay, and you opened in December, which is it's so difficult to get people to show up for things in December with all Christmas functions and things that happen. So was that socials? You reached out through your network of previous clients? How did you do it?
Yeah, I would say marketing with a big circle around it, lots of arrows. It's marketing is everything, in all honesty. Most percent of people, at least 90% of people now have got Instagram, right? So a lot of clients are online, and not only are you able to market yourself how you want your business to be perceived now online, but you also have so much more potential for your outreach. You can target so many more people, and you can target the people you want to target by utilizing your online capabilities. So I think that if you're unsure.
So did you use paid ads targeting certain people?
Yep, we've got paid ads. Yep.
So you target people within a certain geographic radius, in certain age range, certain income or whatever?
We have got a geographic radius on, but I don't think it limits every post to that. I think it just mainly tries to pull people from that space in. In saying that, my personal Pilates page that I've used from the start, since I started becoming a trainer, where I'll post flows and all that sort of stuff on, isn't paid or anything like that. It's just been organic growth. And to be honest, we started off the business profile, the SE profile, is quite organic growth as well. We didn't start really getting into paid ads until it was about a month and a half after we established the brand online. So to be honest, if you're a new business, I'd just say start it from the start, in all honesty. But yeah, definitely recommend paid ads, because it simply just puts your outreach further than you can do it on your own. Instagram has algorithms that it taps into that we can't exactly tap into. So definitely would say, yeah, paid ads.
And who wrote your ads?
Who wrote them?
Yeah.
Me.
Yeah. And so how did you write them? What was your process?
So I'm not very technical. If anything that I write that goes online, in all honesty, I always plan it out, in my notes. I've got a section of notes of what I want to speak about. I also have Feed Preview, which is an app that shows you what your feed is going to look like. You can plan it out. It's like a fake feed. So you can plan it out how it's going to look before it actually happens. So you can see, you can preview for as long into the end of time that you want to. So I already have the next month or so already ready and loaded in the feed. And I know a lot of businesses do this now. It's just an easier way to run things. It gives you a good overview of what your page is going to look like, but it also keeps you accountable for getting out the information that you want to get out. Because sometimes, I might want to get a particular thing out, but something else comes to mind and I'll go to post up. I'm like, oh no, shit, I actually have to make sure I say this first. So I use Feed Preview, and I used that from the beginning. And I'll literally just go into the post. I'll select whatever I've selected. When we started the socials, we made sure we got our own content. So I went and actually got all friends and some previous trainers that I had together, bless them for doing this. They all came on board and I did a shoot day. And we got photos done, professional shots done, so that I had photos to actually use that was us. I didn't want to just use Pinterest and that. Definitely flash some nice Pinterest photos in there for sure. I do it from time to time. especially if it goes with your feet. But yeah, I made sure I got actual professional shots done of us in studio training. And I used those, and I just decided what I needed to get out, what comments I needed to say, whether it was about, a class breakdown, if I had a new class coming on the schedule, what that class is and saying why. But in terms of writing stuff out, I think when it comes to advertising, simple and organic, I think that's probably two of the most important things. When we fluff a bit too much, it gets, it doesn't really get client attraction when you fluff a lot. They're going to get caught up in, the X amount of sentences that you said that they can't relate to, or it's going on for too long and they've missed the main point. I put my main point first. Whatever I'm going to speak about, whatever that post is about, the main point is first. If it's going to be, about a particular class type, you're going to see that class type name straight off the bat, new class type or whatever it is. So when I market, that's the type of stuff that I think about. And I keep it simple. I'm not there to confuse you. I'm there to clarify for you. And I'm there to, encourage you, of course, to come in and try it, but also speak on a level of, I don't expect you to not only understand, but it's more about, I think, just getting out what you want to say straight off the bat. Like, you don't need to make it technical. You don't need to make it an essay. It just needs to be what you want to say. You can throw in a couple quirky lines that is signature and true to you and gives off your personality or the studio personality. And that's really it. That's what I focus on. I'll use like relative hashtags to the industry because I find that brings in quite a bit of attraction from non-following accounts. But then other than that nothing special. I'll always plan it out in that feed preview beforehand, write out or get out what I want to say, cross-check it with Shaz, make sure she's like, yep, you've got everything, or like the spelling looks all good, maybe mention this, maybe mention that. She's my little side editor as well. And then it goes out. I try not to muck around too much.
How much are your sessions? How much do you charge?
So our foundation membership, which is the membership that we've started off with, that will only be available until the end of the month. So we decided to offer an all access. That's something that I thought really lacked in the market that I'm up against. It's quite hard to get a studio that will give you unlimited access, just with no ifs and buts. It's just unlimited access to all class types, as many as you want per week. And I also think, this is quite targeted to our clientele because we have 2 studios. So, it's obviously more in their best interest to be able to use the 2 than to just use the 1. So in terms of our actual pricing breakdown, our unlimited membership for foundation is $55 per week. And that's 3 months locked in contract. And then after this month, so we've extended it now for another month as well, because we want to try, and have as much people with us from the beginning as we can. Like, that's obviously the incentive. Start from us from the start and you get the best rate, to be honest. And then after that, unlimited becomes 65. And then we also do class packs, or we've got the intro offer, obviously, which is your 5 for 50, which is pretty much stock standard across most studios. And then we've got packs, so 5, 10, 20, 25 and 50 classes. So depending on what you want, and then all the packs are valid for 12 months.
Just to finish up with, what are your, what's the next chapter? What's the next season for you? What's the next, mountain that you're climbing? What are the upcoming challenges, for you? What's the next phase, I guess, is what I want to ask.
Yeah. Next phase for us, we already started talking about it before we opened these doors, and that's, I guess, what we're currently we're leaning towards starting to get into, I guess, the bulk of maybe seeing what that looks like for us. But obviously studio number 2, expansion and widespread has always been the plan for Essie. So we do want to definitely have number 2, 3, hopefully continues on from that as well. We've also got a couple other little sister brands in mind that I'm not going to drop too much on because I'm excited to release more details on them when they do come about. But we do have some plans for that in the works. I think that might actually come that will facilitate out prior to number 2. But we definitely have, number 2 in the chats at the moment. And it has been pretty much, before we even opened these doors. We're thinking along the lines of interstate, to be honest. But again, that's something that can't always be predicted. It really depends on placing and timing. So it's a bit out of our control. But that's something that we kind of have in our agenda for the next little while. But definitely, obviously, just continuing to grow the studio, work towards. We've got a lot of things planned for the next 6 months or so. Got challenges coming up, all that sort of stuff. Thoughts about online work. So there's currently a lot of ideas that are in floating bubbles that we will start to pop and work towards fleshing out.
Well, I'd love to check back with you in 6 or 12 months and see which of those bubbles are floating.
See if they've popped and fallen to the floor, but that's all right. We'll pick them up if they do.
Yeah, or new ones will emerge.
That's it.
Because when you're in hustle mode and you're just making shit happen, often the stuff that you make happen doesn't turn out the way that you expected, but often stuff turns out better. Like things come out of it that you wouldn't have expected and wouldn't have planned for, and you're like, oh, this is pretty cool. Let's go with this.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And like honestly, Essie, the studio has exceeded my expectations already. But in saying that, we do have big dreams and big ambitions. So little by little becomes a lot. So that's what we're working towards. But we'll see. We'll have to see how it happens. We'll definitely have to check back in.
Yeah, this has been awesome. And you're doing amazing work, Taylor. And big pat on the back, and look forward to the next one.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Raph. And it was really good to, I guess, sit down and actually chat this stuff out. It lives in my head a lot. It doesn't actually get to come out all too often. So when you can sit and talk about it, it's actually pretty nice. So it was really, really good to catch up.
Yeah, likewise.
All right. Thanks, Raph.